He looked away, staring out at the empty parking lot. I think she was going to eliminate you. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. I felt something cold and sharp lodge itself in my chest, making it hard to breathe. You're wrong. But even as I said it, memories were surfacing, things I'd pushed aside, explained away, forgotten. You have to be wrong. Last month, when you had that allergic reaction at Loren's apartment, what did you eat? The question caught me off guard. We had takeout Chinese food. I've never been allergic to anything in my life, but the doctor said sometimes adults' onset allergies can develop suddenly. Did Lorraine eat the same food? I tried to remember. She said she wasn't hungry. She'd eaten earlier. And 2 months. Before that, when you got food poisoning after lunch with her. ... double quotes, another memory I'd buried. We went to that new sushi place. She didn't eat much. Said she wasn't feeling well. And the time before that, when you fainted at her housewarming party. I was starting to feel sick. She said I must have had too much wine, but I'd only had 1 glass. Naomi. Nolan's voice was infinitely gentle. How many times in the past year have you gotten mysteriously sick after spending time with your sister? I didn't want to count. I didn't want to remember. But the incidents were there, lined up in my memory like evidence in a case I'd been too blind to see 6 times in the past year. 6 times I'd chalked up to coincidence, stress, or simple bad luck. She's my sister, I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me. She's my twin. We shared a womb. She would never ... Why? Nolan asked quietly. Why would she never hurt you? It was such a simple question, but I found myself struggling to answer it because she loves me. But did she really? When was the last time Lorraine had seemed genuinely happy for me? When I'd gotten into medical school, she'd been accepted to the same program but dropped out after the first semester, claiming it was too stressful. When I'd gotten engaged to Nolan, she'd been oddly quiet during the announcement, asking pointed questions about our finances and future plans. When I'd been promoted to chief of pediatric surgery last year, she'd congratulated me with a smile that never reached her eyes. She's jealous, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Oh God, she's jealous. Nolan nodded grimly. Of your career, your marriage, the way your parents talk about you? But that doesn't mean she wants to hurt me, does it? He turned to look at me again. Think about it, Naomi. If something happened to you, if you died, who would inherit your share of your parents' estate? Who would step into the role of the successful daughter? Who would have Miriam and Reuben's undivided attention for the rest of their lives? The answer was obvious, but I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. And if you died of something that looked natural, a medical episode, an allergic reaction, a drug interaction, who would anyone suspect? You're a doctor. You have access to medications. You work long hours under high stress. It would be tragic, but not suspicious. I was crying now, tears I didn't remember starting streaming down my face. You think she's been trying to take my life for months? I think she's been testing, seeing how your body reacts to different things. Tonight was supposed to be the real attempt. But my parents, ... double quotes, your parents love you. They would never intentionally hurt you. But Lorraine knows how to manipulate them. She's had 32 years of practice. I thought about the woman Nolan had seen in the kitchen, the suitcase by the back door, the locked upstairs rooms. Who is upstairs? I asked. I don't know, but I have a theory. Nolan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. I took a picture of the woman I saw. Not great quality, but ... double quotes. He showed me the screen. The image was blurry, taken from a distance. But I could make out a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. You recognize her? I stared at the photo, trying to remember where I might have seen that face before, and then it hit me. Oh my God. My voice came out as barely a whisper. That's Alina. Who's Alina? She used to be our housekeeper when Lorraine and I were teenagers. She worked for my parents for about 2 years and then she just disappeared. My parents said she'd moved back to Romania to take care of her sick mother. When did she disappear? I closed my eyes, trying to remember. It was right around the time I got my acceptance letter to Princeton. Lorraine had been waitlisted. Nolan was quiet for a moment. What if she didn't disappear? What if she's been working for Lorraine all this time? The implications were staggering. If Alina was involved, if she'd been in contact with Lorraine for over a decade, then this wasn't a recent plan born of sudden jealousy. This was something that had been years in the making. We have to call the police, I said, and tell them. What? That your sister served you wine that looked wrong? That someone was walking around upstairs in your parents' house? That you saw a former housekeeper? Nolan shook his head. We need proof. Then what do we do? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the empty parking lot. We get proof. At 11 o'clock that night, we sat in Nolan's car across the street from my parents' house, watching the windows for signs of life. Most of the lights were off now, but I could see a faint glow coming from the kitchen. Are you sure about this? I asked for the 10th time. No, Nolan admitted, but we need to know what they were planning and if Alina is still there. We'd spent the past 2 hours driving around, talking through the possibilities, and slowly building our plan. It was risky. If we were wrong about what had happened tonight, if I'd misinterpreted everything, we'd be breaking into my childhood home for no reason. But if we were right, spare key is still under the third planter on the left, I said quietly. Nolan nodded. We'd been over this. I would go in through the front door while he watched from the backyard. If anyone was still in the house, I'd find out what they were doing there. If the house was empty, I'd look for evidence of what had been planned for tonight. Anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get out immediately. Don't worry about being quiet. Don't worry about being caught. Just run. I know. But knowing and doing were two different things. As I approached the house where I'd grown up, where I'd felt safe and loved for 32 years, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely manage to lift the planter and retrieve the key. The front door opened silently. Dad had always been meticulous about keeping the hinges oiled. I slipped inside and stood in the familiar entryway, listening. The house was quiet, but not empty quiet. There was a tension in the air, a sense of waiting. I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. Low, urgent murmurs that I couldn't make out. Moving as quietly as possible, I crept down the hallway toward the sound. Gone wrong. She wasn't supposed to leave, Lorraine's voice, tight with frustration. A woman's voice with a slight accent. Lena, how could he have known? We were so careful, maybe not careful enough. A pause. What do we do now? We wait. She'll come back. She always comes back here when she's upset. My blood ran cold. They were waiting for me. They knew I might return tonight. And if she doesn't come back, Lena asked, then we try again. Next week, next month, however long it takes. Lorraine's voice was cold, matter of fact. It has to look natural. It has to look like an accident. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to process what I was hearing. My sister, my twin sister, was calmly discussing murdering me. The parents, Lena asked. They don't know anything. They think tonight was just a family dinner that got cut short because Naomi wasn't feeling well. They'll never suspect. They love her very much. They love the idea of her. Loren's voice turned bitter. The perfect daughter with the perfect daughter. With the perfect career and the perfect husband. But they don't see who she really is. And who is she, really? There was a long pause. She's someone who's been living my life. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd never thought of myself as living anyone else's life. I'd worked hard for everything I'd achieved. My medical degree, my surgical training, my position at the hospital. How was any of that taking something away from Lorraine? The insulin is still upstairs, Alina said, in case we need it. My mind raced. I wasn't diabetic. A large dose of insulin in someone who didn't need it would cause severe hypoglycemia, seizures, coma, death, and it would look like a medical emergency, especially if they waited long enough before calling for help. One had to get out of there. I had to find Nolan and call the police. But as I started to back away from the kitchen, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Is she back? Lorraine's voice carried hope and anticipation. No, came my father's voice. I was checking the upstairs windows. No sign of her car. My father was involved. Realization hit me like a sledgehammer. My father, who had always been my biggest supporter, who had encouraged my dreams and celebrated my successes, was part of this. Dad knows, I heard myself whisper, forgetting for a moment that I needed to stay silent. The conversation in the kitchen stopped abruptly. Did you hear something? Alina's voice was sharp. I didn't wait to hear the answer. I ran for the front door, my feet silent on the familiar hardwood floors. But as I reached for the handle, I heard Lorraine's voice behind me. Naomi, is that you, sweetheart? I turned to see my sister standing at the end of the hallway, silhouetted against the light from the kitchen. She looked beautiful and calm, like she always did. But now I could see what Nolan had been seeing all along, the coldness in her eyes, the calculation behind her smile. I was hoping you'd come back, she said, taking a step toward me. We need to talk. Stay away from me. I fumbled with the door handle, my hands shaking. You're upset. I understand, but there's been a misunderstanding. Another step closer. Behind her, I could see Alina emerging from the kitchen, something small and sharp glinting in her hand. Where's Mom? I managed to ask. Upstairs, sleeping. She took one of her pills. You know how the evening's events upset her. One of her pills. How many members of my family were being sedated tonight? And Dad's fine. He's worried about you. We all are. But even as she said it, I could see my father appear behind Alina, his face pale and confused. He looked like a man who was just beginning to understand that he'd been pulled into something terrible. Lorraine, he said, his voice uncertain. What's going on? Why is Naomi running? My sister's composure cracked for just a moment. It's fine, Dad. Just a misunderstanding. Naomi's not feeling well, remember? Dad was looking at me now. Really looking, and I could see the moment when everything clicked into place for him. The fear in my eyes, the way I was pressed against the door, the syringe in Alina's hand. Oh God, he whispered. Lorraine, what have you done? That was all the distraction I needed. I yanked open the front door and ran into the night, shouting for Nolan at the top of my lungs. Nolan met me halfway across the yard, gathering me into his arms as I sobbed out what I'd heard. Behind us, the front door of my childhood home stood open, spilling light onto the lawn. We're calling the police, he said firmly, pulling out his phone. Wait. Loren's voice came from the doorway. She was standing there alone now, her hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Please, let me explain. Explain what? Nolan's voice was deadly calm. How you were planning to take my wife's life. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I found my voice, though it came out rough and shaky. I heard you, Lorraine. I heard you talking about insulin and accidents and waiting for me to come back. Lorraine closed her eyes for a moment. And when she opened them, something had changed. The mask was finally off. You want to know what it is? Her voice was different, now raw, more real than I'd ever heard it. It's 32 years of being the other twin, the backup daughter. The one who was always almost as good as Naomi. That's not true, isn't it? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. When we were kids, who got better grades? Who made captain of the soccer team? Who got into Princeton while I was waitlisted? You chose to drop out of medical school, I said. I supported that decision. I thought you were following your passion for event planning. I dropped out because I couldn't compete with you. Because every professor, every classmate, every person we met would look at us and see the smart twin and the pretty twin. Guess which one I was? The pain in her voice was real, and for a moment I felt the old urge to comfort her, to fix whatever was wrong. But then I remembered the syringe, the insulin, the casual way she discussed my death. So you decided to eliminate me. I decided to become you. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Do you know what it's like to watch your parents' faces light up every time you walk into a room? To see the pride when they talk about their daughter, the doctor? To know that if something happened to you, I could finally be the daughter they always wanted. They love you too. They love the idea of me. They love having two daughters instead of one. But if they had to choose, we all know who they'd pick. She took a step closer, and I instinctively moved back. When you die, I'll be the grieving sister, the one who steps up to take care of mom and dad in their old age, the one who inherits the house, the savings, the respect. You're insane. I'm practical. Lorraine's voice was getting stronger, more confident, like she was relieved to finally tell the truth. Do you think I enjoyed spending months researching untraceable methods? Do you think it was fun watching you get sick over and over again? Calculating dosages, timing reactions? You've been feeding me toxins for months? Testing, she corrected, making sure I understood how your body would react. You're surprisingly resilient, you know? It took longer than I expected to find something that would work without being detected. Nolan's grip on me tightened. The police are on their way. No, they're not. Lorraine smiled, and I saw a flicker of the calculation that had always been there, hidden beneath her sweet exterior. 'Cause you haven't called them yet. You want to hear the rest of the story first? He was right. Despite everything, despite the terror and betrayal, I needed to understand. I needed to know how. The sister I'd shared everything with had become someone who could plot to destroy me with such cold precision. How long? I asked. How long have you been planning this? Since we were 12, the answer hit me like a physical blow. 12? Do you remember the science fair? 7th grade? We both entered projects about genetics and heredity. Yours won first place. Mine came in third. I did remember. If I'd been so proud of that blue ribbon, if I'd assumed Lorraine was proud of me too. She'd congratulated me, hugged me, told everyone at school how smart her sister was. That night, I heard Mom and Dad talking in the kitchen. They were so excited about your win, making plans for how to encourage your interest in science. I said, maybe you'll become a doctor someday. Mom said you had the brains for it, and they didn't say anything about you? Oh, they did. Loren's smile was bitter. Dad said it was nice that I'd participated too. Mom said maybe I could be a nurse if I worked really hard. I wanted to tell her she was remembering it wrong, that our parents had always treated us equally. But even as I thought it, I could recall dozens of similar moments. Times when my achievements had been celebrated while hers were politely acknowledged. That's when I realized that there wasn't room for both of us to be successful. Not really. As long as you existed, I would always be the lesser twin. So you decided to destroy me when we were 12. I decided to become you. At first, I thought I could just be better, work harder, but it didn't matter what I did. You were naturally smart, naturally talented, naturally everything our parents wanted. Behind Lorraine, I could see movement in the house. My father appeared in the doorway, looking older than I'd ever seen him. His face was pale and drawn, and he was leaning heavily against the doorframe. Lorraine, he said quietly, stop, please, stop. She turned to look at him, and for a moment her mask slipped back into place. It's okay, Dad. I'm just explaining things to Naomi, clearing up some misunderstandings. There's no misunderstanding. Dad's voice was heavy with grief. I heard what you said in the kitchen. I heard what you were planning. You don't understand. Understand that I failed you. He looked at me, then back at Lorraine. I failed both of you. I made you feel like you had to compete for my love. Instead of knowing you both had it unconditionally. It's too late for that now, Lorraine said. But I could hear the crack in her voice. It's not too late. We can get you help. We can help. Lorraine laughed, and the sound was sharp and broken. Help for what? for finally having the courage to take what should have been mine from the beginning. That's when I saw her hand move to her pocket, the same pocket where Alina had been carrying the syringe. "Nolan," I whispered. He was already moving, stepping in front of me as Lorraine pulled out the small medical device. But instead of pointing it at me, she held it up so we could all see it clearly. "Insulin," she said conversationally. "Enough to finish someone my size within 30 minutes. Longer if you're lucky enough to get medical attention quickly." "Lorraine, don't," Dad said, taking a step toward her. "You know what the beautiful thing about insulin is?" She was backing away from us now, toward the street. "It's naturally occurring in the body. Even if someone suspects something and orders an autopsy, elevated insulin levels could be explained away as a medical condition that went undiagnosed." "Put it down," Nolan said firmly. "Whatever you're planning, this isn't the way, isn't it?" Lorraine's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice was steady. "I've spent 20 years planning this. 20 years watching Naomi live the life that should have been mine. Do you know what it's like to smile and pretend to be happy for someone when every achievement they have feels like it's being stolen from you? Those weren't your achievements to steal," I said, finding my voice. "I worked for everything I have. I earned it. With what? Natural talent, good genes, luck." Lorraine shook her head. "We have the same genes, Naomi, the same parents, the same upbringing, the same opportunities. The only difference is that somehow you got to be the special one." "That's not true." "It is true." For the first time, real emotion broke through her controlled facade. "You know how many times I've had to listen to Mom and Dad talk about their daughter, the doctor? How many family gatherings I've sat through while relatives asked me why I couldn't be more like my sister." The pain in her voice was real. And despite everything, despite the fear and the betrayal and the insulin in her hand, my heart ached for her. We'd been children when this started. Children who should have been best friends instead of competitors. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I never knew you felt that way. I never wanted you to feel like you were in my shadow. But I was. I had been my entire life, and the only way out is through." She raised the syringe, and for a moment, I thought she was going to lunge at me with it, but then I realized what she was really planning. "No." I started toward her, but Nolan caught my arm. "If I can't be you," Lorraine said, her voice suddenly calm again, "then no one can." She pressed the needle into her own arm and depressed the plunger. The next few hours passed in a blur of paramedics, police officers, and hospital waiting rooms. Lorraine was unconscious by the time the ambulance arrived, her blood sugar having dropped to dangerous levels. But we'd called for help quickly enough that the doctors were optimistic about her recovery. I sat in the hospital corridor, still, wearing the navy dress I'd put on so carefully hours earlier, trying to process everything that had happened. Nolan sat beside me, his hand warm and steady in mine. "The police want to talk to you again tomorrow," he said quietly. "But they have enough evidence from tonight to charge her when she wakes up." I nodded, but I wasn't really thinking about charges or trials. I was thinking about my sister lying in the ICU 3 floors above us and trying to understand how we'd gotten to this point. Mr. and Mrs. Garrett. A doctor in scrubs approached us, her expression professionally neutral. "I'm Dr. Stevens. I've been treating your sister-in-law. How is she?" I asked. "Stable. She's going to make a full recovery. We'll need to monitor her for another day or two, but there shouldn't be any permanent damage." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by guilt. After everything Lorraine had done, after months of her trying to end my life, I was still glad she was alive. "Can we see her? She's sedated right now, but she should be awake tomorrow morning. Should warn you, though, the police have posted a guard outside her room." I nodded. Of course, they had. Lorraine was no longer my sister. She was a suspect. "In an attempted homicide case, Dr. Garrett," Dr. Stevens continued, "I'm required to ask, do you need medical attention? The police mentioned that you may have been given something earlier tonight." "I'm fine." I didn't drink whatever was in the wine. Still, given the circumstances, I'd recommend some blood work just to be safe. An hour later, I was sitting in an exam room while a nurse drew vials of blood. Nolan sat in the chair beside the bed, looking exhausted. I keep thinking about what she said. I told him about being in my shadow, about competing for our parents' love. That doesn't excuse what she did? No, it doesn't. But it explains it. I watched the nurse label the vials with my name and date of birth. I never realized how she felt. I thought we were both happy. You can't blame yourself for her choices, can't I? What if I had paid more attention? What if I had been more supportive of her career, more encouraging about her accomplishments? What if she had talked to you about how she felt instead of trying to take your life? The bluntness of his words made me flinch. But he was right. Whatever pain Lorraine had been carrying, whatever jealousy had been eating at her for 20 years, there had been other options. Therapy, honest conversation, distance if necessary. What happens now? I asked. Now you heal, you rebuild. You figure out how to trust people again. What about my parents? That was the question that had been haunting me since we'd left the house. My father had clearly been manipulated by Lorraine, drawn into her plans without fully understanding what she intended. But he'd still been there tonight. He'd still been part of it. We'll figure it out, Nolan said. One day at a time. The blood work came back clean. No traces of any foreign substances in my system. By the time we finally made it home, the sun was beginning to rise over the city. I stood in our bedroom, looking at myself in the same mirror where I'd gotten ready for dinner 12 hours earlier. The woman looking back at me was the same person, but everything else had changed. I trusted her completely. I said to Nolan's reflection, my entire life, I trusted her more than anyone else in the world. I know. How do I trust anyone again? How do I know who's real and who's pretending? Nolan came up behind me, his arms circling my waist. You learn to trust yourself. You learn to pay attention to the things that feel wrong, even when you can't explain why, like you did tonight, like I did tonight. I leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't see, for getting me out of there. That's what husbands are for. But even as he said it, I was thinking about all the times I'd dismissed his concerns about Lorraine. All the moments when he'd tried to warn me and I'd brushed him off. How many red flags had I ignored because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale of my perfect family? I need to see her, I said suddenly. Tomorrow, when she wakes up, I need to talk to her. Naomi, ... I need to understand. I need to hear her explain it. In her own words, Nolan was quiet for a moment. They'll probably only let you talk to her with an officer present. I know, but I'm going with you, okay? We'll go together. We didn't talk about revenge that night. We didn't discuss justice or punishment or what Lorraine deserved for what she'd done. We simply held each other and tried to process the fact that my entire life had been built on a lie. But even then, even in the safety of Nolan's arms, I was already planning. Lorraine was awake when we arrived at the hospital the next afternoon. Swa sitting up in bed, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her skin pale but alert. Without makeup and designer clothes, she looked younger, more vulnerable. More like the girl I'd shared a bedroom with for 18 years. Hi, she said quietly when she saw me. The police officer stationed outside her door had warned us that our conversation would be monitored, that anything she said could be used as evidence in her upcoming trial. But Lorraine had agreed to see me anyway. Hi, I replied, taking the chair beside her bed. Nolan remained standing near the door, close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough away to give us some privacy. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Even now, even after, everything, the similarities between us were striking. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same bone structure. We were mirror images of each other, or we had been before last night had shattered the illusion. Are you okay? Lorraine asked. The question was so normal, so much like something the old Lorraine would have asked that it caught me off guard. Are you seriously asking me that? I know it's stupid, but I need to know you're okay. You've tried to eliminate me? No. For months you've been slowly sedating me for months. I know. And now you want to know if I'm okay. Lorraine closed her eyes. I know it doesn't make sense, but even with everything that happened, even with everything I did, you're still my sister. Still, ... She opened her eyes and looked at me directly. I still love you. The words hit me like a physical blow. You have a funny way of showing it. I know. That's all you can say. I know. Lorraine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more uncertain. What do you want me to say? I want you to explain. I want to understand how someone who claims to love me could spend months planning to destroy me, because loving you and hating you aren't mutually exclusive. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back for years. I love you, and I've always loved you, but I also hate you for being everything I wanted to be. I hate you for being effortlessly good at things I had to work twice as hard to achieve. I hate you for being Mom and Dad's favorite, even though they tried to hide it. So you decided to end my life. I decided to replace you. She looked down at her hands, which were clasped tightly in her lap. In my head, it made sense. I would become the successful daughter. I would take over your life, your relationships, your achievements. I would finally be the person our parents could be proud of. And you thought no one would notice the difference? I thought I could learn to be you. I've been studying you for months. Your mannerisms, your speech patterns, your relationships. I know how you interact with your colleagues, how you talk to Nolan, how you are with Mom and Dad. The idea was so absurd, so disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. You thought you could just step into my life and no one would know? I thought I could do it better than you. What does that even mean? It means I would have been a better wife to Nolan, a better daughter to our parents, a better surgeon. Her voice was getting stronger, more confident, and I could see flashes of the delusion that had driven her to this point. I would have appreciated everything you took for granted. I don't take anything for granted, don't you? Lorraine looked up at me, and her eyes were bright with years of suppressed resentment. You've never had to wonder if your husband really loves you, or if he just settled for you. You've never had to watch your parents' faces light up when someone else walks into the room. You've never had to pretend to be happy about achievements that should have been yours. Those achievements were never yours. They were mine because I earned them. How do you know? How do you know you earned them and I didn't? We have the same genes, the same intelligence, the same capabilities. The only difference is opportunity and luck and hard work and choices and ... double quotes ... and being born 3 minutes earlier. The words hung in the air between us. 3 minutes. That's how much older I was than Lorraine. The difference between being the first twin and the second, the older sister and the younger. You think those 3 minutes made the difference? I think those 3 minutes made you the firstborn? The one our parents unconsciously favored from the beginning. The one who got the extra attention, the higher expectations, the bigger dreams. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Do you really believe that? I've had 20 years to think about it. You've had 20 years to build a fantasy that justifies taking a life. Lorraine flinched as if I'd hit her. It wasn't supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be replacement substitution. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Taking a life implies malice. I didn't want to hurt you out of hatred. I wanted to become you out of love. The twisted logic was so disturbing that I felt physically sick. That's not love, Lorraine. It's obsession. Maybe, but it's the only kind of love I know how to feel for you. What happens now? Lorraine asked finally. Now you go to trial. You probably go to prison. I meant with us, with our family. There is no us anymore. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but they were true. There's no family. Anymore? You destroyed that, Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad will have to figure out how to live with the fact that one of their daughters tried to take the life of the other. That's not something you come back from. Loren's eyes filled with tears. I never meant for them to get hurt. But they did get hurt. Dad especially. Do you know what it did to him to realize he'd been manipulated into helping you? Do you know what it's going to do to Mom when she finds out what you were planning? I thought if it looked like an accident, they'd never have to. No. You thought they'd never have to know that you took my life. I thought they'd grieve for you, and then eventually they'd be grateful to still have me. The delusion was so complete, so disconnected from reality, that I finally understood that this wasn't just jealousy or sibling rivalry. This was something deeper, more fundamental. Lorraine had constructed an entire alternate reality in her mind, one where ending a life was excused and love was possession. You need help, I said. Professional help, I know. Do you really understand that what you did was wrong? Lorraine was quiet for a long moment. I understand that it hurt you. I understand that it hurt our parents. I understand that it was illegal. But do you understand that it was wrong? Another pause. I understand that other people think it was wrong. That was when I knew with absolute certainty that my sister was lost to me forever. The Lorraine I'd grown up with, the twin who had shared my childhood and my secrets and my dreams, had never really existed. I need to go, I said, standing up. Naomi, wait. Lorraine reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Will you come see me again? I looked down at hers, this woman who had my face, but not my heart. Who had shared my DNA, but not my values. Who had been my sister, but never my friend. No, I said quietly. I won't. As we left the hospital, Nolan took my hand. How do you feel? Empty, I said honestly. Like I've been mourning someone who was never real to begin with? Maybe that's exactly what you've been doing? 3 weeks later, I was cleaning. Out my home office when I found the journal. Was tucked behind a row of medical textbooks on the top shelf, a small leather-bound notebook that I'd never seen before. When I opened it, I recognized Lorraine's handwriting immediately. 15th. Visited Naomi today. She looks tired, working too many hours at the hospital. Nolan seems worried about her. I could use that. May 22nd. Lunch with N complained about back pain. Suggested she see a specialist. He brushed it off. Always thinks she knows better because she's a doctor. So arrogant. June 3rd. Success. Got sick after our dinner last week. Vomiting, dizziness, mild fever. Lasted about 12 hours. Perfect duration. She blamed it on the salmon. June 10th. Need to be more careful with dosages. Don't want to cause permanent damage before I'm ready. The goal is replacement, not revenge. June 18th. Nolan is getting suspicious. He watches me too closely when I'm around. May need to deal with him separately. My hands were shaking as I read page after page of my sister's meticulous planning. She documented every attempt, every symptom I'd experienced, every reaction she'd observed. She tracked my schedule, my routines, my relationships. And she'd been documenting it for over 2 years. The journal contained detailed plans to end my life, but it also contained something else. Observations about my life that were eerily accurate and deeply disturbing. N doesn't appreciate what she has. Complains about long hours, but loves the attention of being the important surgeon. Complains about Nolan's work schedule, but loves having a successful husband. Takes Mom and Dad's pride for granted. If I were her, I would be grateful every single day. I would cherish every moment with Nolan. I would call Mom and Dad more often. I would deserve the life she's wasting. When I become her, I'll do it right. The entries became increasingly detailed and increasingly unhinged as they progressed. Lorraine had planned not just to end my life, but my entire replacement. She'd researched my work colleagues, memorized my patient files, even practiced my signature. But it was the final entry that made my blood run cold. November 15th found the perfect solution. Alina agrees to help in exchange for $50,000 and a permanent position as housekeeper. She's been watching N for months now, learning her routines. She can get into the house. Isley still uses the same security code she's had for years. Our birthday, how predictable. The insulin plan is foolproof. Quick, relatively peaceful, and nearly undetectable if we time it right. Alina will discover the body after an appropriate delay. By the time paramedics arrive, it will look like a diabetic emergency. No one will think to question it. After the funeral, I'll be the grieving sister who steps up to take care of everyone. I'll comfort Nolan through his loss. I'll be there for Mom and Dad. Eventually, maybe in a year or two, Nolan and I will find solace in each other. He'll realize that I understand him better than Anne ever did. I'll be everything she was, but better. I'll be the woman she could have been if she'd truly appreciated what she had, very soon now. I dropped the journal like it was on fire, my mind reeling. Lorraine had been planning to steal my entire life. My husband, my parents, my identity, everything. And Alina had been watching me for months, studying my routines, learning how to impersonate my lifestyle. How many times had she been in my house without my knowledge? How many times had I been under surveillance without realizing it? I called Nolan immediately. "You need to come home," I said when he answered. Now, I found something. He was there within 20 minutes, and his face went white as he read through the journal entries. "She's completely delusional," he said finally. "She actually thought she could replace you and no one would notice. She thought I would fall in love with her. That's the most insane part of all of this." Nolan looked up at me, his expression a mixture of disgust and disbelief. How could she think I wouldn't know the difference? How could she think I wouldn't notice that my wife had been replaced by someone else? Because she's been living in a fantasy for years. She convinced herself that we're essentially the same person, that the only differences between us are superficial. "You need to give this to the police." I nodded, but my mind was already racing in another direction. "Nolan, what if we don't?" "What do you mean?" "What if we keep this journal to ourselves? What if we use it instead of turning it over?" He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Naomi, this is evidence in a criminal case. You can't withhold evidence." "I'm not talking about withholding evidence. I'm talking about delayed reporting." "What are you planning?" I looked down at the journal again, at the pages and pages of meticulous planning for my replacement. Lorraine had spent 2 years preparing to steal my life. She documented every detail, planned every contingency, prepared for every possibility, except one. "I'm planning to give her exactly what she wanted," I said quietly. The plan took 3 months to arrange, but it was worth every day of careful preparation. I started by hiring a private investigator to track down every detail of Lorraine's life over the past 2 years. Her apartment, her bank accounts, her employment history, her relationships. I wanted to understand her world as thoroughly as she'd understood mine. What I found was even more disturbing than I'd expected. Lorraine had been systematically destroying her own life in preparation for taking over mine. She'd quit her job at the catering company some months ago, telling them she was moving out of state. She'd been gradually withdrawing money from her savings account, stockpiling cash for her new life. She'd even started canceling her lease and selling her furniture. She'd been erasing herself to make room for me. But the most shocking discovery was her relationship with Dr. Alina Vasquez, a psychiatrist who specialized in dissociative identity disorders. Lorraine had been seeing her for over a year, claiming to suffer from episodes where she believed she was someone else. She was very convincing, Dr. Vasquez told me during our confidential meeting. She described elaborate fantasies about living another person's life, complete with detailed memories and relationships. I was treating her for what I believed was a severe dissociative disorder. You didn't realize she was planning to act on these fantasies. She never mentioned any intention to harm anyone. She presented it as an involuntary mental health condition, not a deliberate plan. Did she ever mention me specifically? Dr. Vasquez hesitated. She often talked about her twin sister. She claimed that sometimes she would wake up believing she was you with your memories and your life. She said it was getting worse over time, and you believed her. I believed she was experiencing genuine psychological distress. Whether that distress was caused by a dissociative disorder or by something else, ... I'm beginning to question my initial assessment. That's when I knew exactly what I needed to do. I spent the next month working with Dr. Vasquez to understand the treatment, protocols for severe dissociative disorders. I learned about memory reconstruction therapy, identity integration techniques, and the medications used to treat patients who've struggled with multiple personalities. And then I put my plan into motion. I want to help her, I told the prosecutor, handling Lorraine's case. I want to make sure she gets the mental health treatment she needs instead of just prison time. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Catherine Mills, looked skeptical. Miss Garrett, your sister attempted to take your life. The state has a strong case for attempted homicide. I understand that, but I also understand that she's sick. Prison won't cure her mental illness. It will just warehouse her until she gets out and potentially tries again. What are you proposing? I'm proposing that she be transferred to a specialized psychiatric facility for intensive treatment. She shows improvement. If she can be genuinely rehabilitated, then maybe she can eventually reintegrate into society. And if she can't be rehabilitated, then she stays in treatment indefinitely. But at least we'll have tried to address the root cause of her behavior instead of just punishing her for it. It took several more meetings and multiple psychiatric evaluations. But eventually, the judge agreed to transfer Lorraine to Riverside Psychiatric Institute for a comprehensive treatment program. I visited her on her first day there. Thank you, she said when I walked into her new room. It was sparse, but comfortable: a bed, a desk, a chair, and a small window that looked out onto the hospital grounds. I know you didn't have to do this. I did it because I want you to get better. Do you think I can get better? I sat down in the visitor's chair and looked at my sister. Really looked at her for the first time since that night at our parents' house. She seemed smaller, somehow more fragile. The confident mask she'd worn for years had finally cracked completely. I think you can learn to be yourself instead of trying to be me, I said carefully. What if I don't know how to be myself? But then you'll learn. That's what therapy is for. Over the next several weeks, I visited Lorraine regularly. I watched her participate in group therapy sessions, individual counseling, specialized treatment for what the doctors now classified as a severe case of identity disturbance with homicidal ideation. And slowly, carefully, I began to implement my plan. The doctors say you're making progress, I told her during one visit. I'm trying. It's hard to separate my thoughts from the fantasies I built up about your life. What kind of fantasies? Your life was perfect. That if I could just be you, all my problems would disappear. She looked down at her hands. I know now that's not how it works. No, it's not. Everyone's life has problems. Everyone struggles with something, even you, especially me. You want to know what my biggest struggle has been for the past 2 years? Lorraine looked up, curiosity flickering in her eyes, feeling like I was losing my sister. Feeling like you were pulling away from me and I didn't know why. Wondering if I'd done something wrong to make you distant? You didn't do anything wrong, I know that now. But for months, I blamed myself for the change in our relationship. I'm sorry. I know you are, and I forgive you. The words were true, but they were also strategic. I needed Lorraine to trust me. I needed her to believe that I genuinely wanted to help her recover because the real treatment was just beginning. I want to try something new. I told Dr. Patricia Karn, Lorraine's primary psychiatrist at Riverside. A form of intensive therapy. That might help her integrate her identity more effectively. Dr. Karn looked intrigued. What did you have in mind? Role reversal exercises. Structured interactions where she practices being herself while I act as a supportive presence. It's based on some experimental techniques I've been researching. And you think this would be beneficial? I think she needs to learn how to be comfortable with her own identity instead of coveting mine. The best way to do that might be to show her that being herself is enough. Dr. Karn agreed to supervise the sessions, and we began meeting with Kassav. Like, look at this. Like, look at this. And we all know I've been exploring. And we all know I've been exploring that path. We see a CD of Kassav. The best way to do that, may we see pry. LCD Arco C, Noe, My Dakwar. I'll see Fizz. They like C, Coffer, Colin, Di Kai, to sue with Kakord, Sai, Singi, we are at Unli, Sokorat, Greco, with you, I can, we get a sue, we see with I, can you, we lie, get to see you could get a sigan, you could cur, I, kai, did such to do with that, get a sacred cafe, etica, act, kiditic, out of get a check, kidway, Lorraine, 3 times a week in a private therapy room. Today, I want you to tell me about your life. I said during our first session, not my life, not the life you think you want, but your actual life, the good parts and the bad parts. I don't know where to start. Start with something you're proud of, something that's uniquely yours. Lorraine was quiet for a long moment. I planned your wedding reception. That's right, you did. And it was beautiful. You wanted something simple, but I convinced you to let me design something more elaborate. The centerpieces with the cascading. Orchids, the string quartet, the custom lighting. For the first time in months, her face lit up with genuine pride. Everyone said it was the most beautiful wedding they'd ever seen. It was. You have an incredible talent for creating beauty. But it wasn't enough. Creating beautiful things for other people wasn't enough. I wanted to be the person having the beautiful life, not just designing it. Why? Because creating things for other people means you're always on the outside looking in. You're always the assistant, never the star. What if being the assistant was enough? What if creating beauty was your gift, your purpose? Then I would still be nobody. You wouldn't be nobody. You'd be Lorraine, and Lorraine is someone worth being. These sessions continued for weeks. Slowly, carefully, I helped Lorraine rebuild her sense of self. I encouraged her to talk about her own achievements, her own dreams, her own value as a person separate from me. And gradually, I began to plant the seeds of my real plan. I'd been thinking about something I said during one session about what happens when you're ready to leave here. What do you mean? Well, you can't go back to your old life. You sold most of your things, quit your job, ended your lease. In a way, you did successfully erase your old identity. So now you need to build a new one, a new identity, a healthy one, a real one that's authentically yours. Lorraine looked uncertain. How do I do that? We start fresh, new city, new career, new relationships. It's a chance to be whoever you want to be without the shadow of our past hanging over you. You would help me do that. I would help you disappear. The word hung in the air between us. Disappear. It was what? Lorraine had always wanted to erase herself and become someone else. But now I was offering her the chance to erase herself and become herself. What about Mom and Dad? What about them? They'd want to know where I was. They'd want to visit. Would they? I let the questions sit for a moment. Lorraine, our parents love you, but they're also traumatized by what you did. Right now, they're in their own therapy, trying to understand how they missed the signs of your illness. They feel guilty and confused and heartbroken. I never wanted to hurt them. I know, but you did hurt them. And maybe the kindest thing you can do now is give them space to heal without having to worry about you. You mean abandon them? Give them the gift of not having to see you and remember what happened every time they look at your face. Loren's eyes filled with tears. You think they don't want to see me anymore? I think they love you, but they need time. And I think you need time, too. Time to figure out who you are when you're not trying to be me. Over the next month, I carefully outlined my proposal. I would help Lorraine create a new identity, legal documentation, job references, a complete background. She could move to a different state, start a career in event planning under a new name, build relationships with people who had never heard of Naomi Garrett. She could have the fresh start she'd always wanted, but on her own terms. There would be conditions. I told her during one of our final sessions before her scheduled release. What kind of conditions? You would never contact me again, never contact our parents, never return to this city. You would essentially cease to exist as Lorraine Morrison and become someone completely new. And in exchange, you get your freedom. No prison time, no criminal record following you around. No constant reminder of what you did. A complete clean slate. What about you? What do you get out of this? I looked at my sister. I get the satisfaction of knowing that you finally got what you wanted. You get to disappear and become someone else. The only difference is this time you'll be becoming yourself instead of me. Lorraine was quiet for a long time. Oh. And if I say no, then you serve your full sentence. 7 to 10 years for attempted homicide. You'll be nearly 40 when you get out with a criminal record and no support system. If you've really thought this through, I've had months to think about it. What happens if I take your offer but then break the conditions? What if I try to contact you or our parents? I pulled out a folder I'd been keeping in my purse and handed it to her. Then this gets released to the media. Lorraine opened the folder and found copies of her journal entries, photographs of her stalking activities, detailed psychiatric evaluations, and a comprehensive timeline of her 2-year plan to end my life. Everything, I said quietly. Every sick fantasy, every calculated move, every moment when you chose obsession over sanity. It would be a fascinating case study for criminal psychologists. Her face went white. You would destroy me. I would reveal you. There's a difference. The whole world would know what I did. The whole world would know who you really are, or who you were anyway. Which is why it's so important that you become someone completely different. Lorraine stared at the documents for several minutes, reading through her own words, seeing her obsession laid out in black and white. Ah, I really was insane, wasn't I? She said finally. You were sick. Whether you were insane is something philosophers can debate. What matters now is that you're getting better. Am I getting better? You're learning to see reality more clearly. You're beginning to understand the difference between fantasy and truth. That's progress. She closed the folder and handed it back to me. What's my new name going to be? 6 months later, I received a postcard from Seattle. No return address, no signature. Just a picture of Pike Place Market and 3 words written in unfamiliar handwriting. Thank you, goodbye. I knew it was from the woman who used to be my sister, according to the documentation I'd arranged. Claire Patterson was a 28-year-old event coordinator from Portland with excellent references and a clean background check. She had a social security number, a driver's license, and a carefully constructed employment history that would stand up to scrutiny. She also had a new face. The plastic surgery had been subtle but effective, a slightly different nose, reshaped eyebrows, a small scar on her chin that changed the entire structure of her face. She no longer looked like my twin, barely looked like my sister. She looked like herself. Never heard from her again after that postcard, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. The woman who had tried to steal my life had finally gotten what she'd always wanted, the chance to disappear and become someone else. The only difference was that this time she was becoming herself instead of me. My parents took longer to heal. I keep wondering what we did wrong, my mother said during one of our weekly therapy sessions. How did we raise a daughter who could plan something so horrible? You didn't do anything wrong? Dr. Siamara, our family therapist, assured her. Mental illness isn't caused by parenting. It's a complex combination of genetics, brain chemistry, and environmental factors that no one fully understands. But the competition between them, Dad said. The way we always compared their achievements? Maybe if we'd been more careful. Maybe, I said quietly. But maybe not. Lorraine made her own choices. She chose to see our relationship as a competition instead of asking for help when she was struggling. Do you think she's really better now, Mom asked. Wherever she is. I thought about the postcard, about the new identity, about the chance I'd given my sister to start over completely. I think she has the opportunity to be better. Whether she takes it or not is up to her. The truth was, I didn't know if Claire was better. I didn't know if the woman who had tried to eliminate me was truly rehabilitated or just better at hiding her obsessions. But I'd given her the thing she'd always wanted, the chance to disappear and become someone else. And in doing so, I'd given myself something, too, peace. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wondering if my sister was jealous of some achievement or resentful of some success. I wasn't trying to include her in my happiness while secretly sensing her resentment. I wasn't walking on eggshells around someone who smiled at me while planning my death. I was free. Dr. Garrett, my surgical resident, poked her head into my office. Your 4 o'clock appointment is here. I looked up from the patient files I'd been reviewing. Send them in. The woman who walked into my office was probably in her early 30s with short blonde hair and nervous eyes. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. Dr. Garrett, thank you for seeing me. I'm Emma Rodriguez. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What can I do for you, Ms. Rodriguez? I'm a journalist, working on a story about sibling violence and family trauma. I was hoping you might be willing to share your experience with your sister's illness. My blood ran cold. I'm sorry. Your twin sister, Lorraine Morrison, the attempted homicide case from 2 years ago. I know she was transferred to a psychiatric facility for treatment, but there's no record of her being released. I was wondering if you could tell me what happened to her. I kept my expression carefully neutral. I'm afraid I can't discuss my sister's medical treatment. Patient confidentiality laws. You understand? Of course. But surely you could share your own perspective on the experience. How it felt to discover that your twin sister had been trying to take your life. Ms. Rodriguez, I appreciate your interest in the topic of family violence. But I'm not comfortable being interviewed about such a personal matter. I understand your reluctance, but I think your story could help other families recognize warning signs, prevent similar tragedies. I studied the woman's face more carefully. There was something about her eyes, something about the way she held her head. Where did you say you were from? I asked. I'm freelance. I write for several national magazines. And how did you hear about my case? Was in the local papers at the time. I've been researching it for months. Researching it? How? Police records, court documents, hospital records? She paused. I even tracked down your sister's former psychiatrist. Dr. Alina Vasquez had some very interesting things to say about Lorraine's condition. That's when I knew. The surgery had been good, but it hadn't changed her voice. It hadn't changed the way she tilted her head when she was lying. It hadn't changed the predatory gleam in her eyes when she thought she had an advantage. What do you want? I asked quietly. Emma Rodriguez smiled, and for just a moment I saw my sister underneath the new face. I want to come home. Home. Doesn't exist anymore, doesn't it? Our parents are still alive. You're still here. I'm still me underneath everything. No, I said firmly. You're not. Lorraine Morrison died 2 years ago. You're someone else now, am I? 'Cause I remember everything. I remember our childhood, our family, our life together. I remember planning your death. The words were spoken casually, conversationally, but they hit me like ice water. I also remember the deal we made, she continued. And I remember what happens if I break it. I reached for my phone, but she held up a hand to stop me. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to renegotiate. There's nothing to negotiate, isn't there? Because I've been Claire Patterson for 2 years now. Do you know what I've learned? I didn't answer. I've learned that being someone else doesn't change who you are inside. I've learned that no matter how far I run or how much I change my appearance, I'm still your sister. I'm still the person who knows you better than anyone else in the world. If you're the person who tried to eliminate me, if I'm the person who loved you so much that I wanted to become you, and I'm the person who spent 2 years thinking about what that really means. She leaned forward in her chair. And despite the changed features, despite the new name and the new life, I could see Lorraine looking back at me. I don't want to be you anymore, Naomi. I want to be me, but I want to be me in relationship to you. I want to be your sister again. That's not possible. Why not? 'Cause sisters don't try to take each other's life. Sisters don't usually have to compete for the same life. She sat back, her expression thoughtful. But what if we didn't have to compete anymore? What if we could both exist in the same world without one of us having to disappear? What are you proposing? I'm proposing that we try again carefully, with boundaries and supervision and all the safeguards you want to put in place. But I'm proposing that we try to be sisters again. I stared at this woman who wore a stranger's face but spoke with my sister's voice. You broke the conditions of our agreement. You came back. I broke the letter of our agreement, but I think I'm honoring the spirit of it. How do you figure that? You wanted me to become someone new. Someone who wasn't obsessed with stealing your life. Someone who could be happy with her own existence. She smiled. Mission accomplished. You think you're cured? I think I'm different. I think 2 years of being Claire Patterson taught me things that 28 years of being Lorraine Morrison never did, such as the fact that I can be successful on my own merits. I've built a thriving event planning business in Seattle. I have friends who like me for who I am. I have a life that's mine, not stolen from someone else. And you want to throw that away to come back here? I don't want to throw it away. I want to expand it. I want to be Claire Patterson and your sister. I want to have my own life in our family too. The audacity of it was breathtaking. She wanted everything the new identity I'd given her, the successful life she'd built for herself, and the family relationships she'd destroyed. Our parents think you're dead, I said. Our parents think Lorraine is gone. They never knew Claire. That's not how it works, is it? People change their names all the time. People get plastic surgery. People reinvent themselves. Why can't I be their daughter with a new name and a new face, but the same heart? Because you tried to take their other daughter's life, but Claire would never hurt you. Claire understands that your success doesn't diminish her worth. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but there was something in her voice that stopped me. A sincerity I'd never heard from her before. You really believe you're a different person now? I really believe I'm a better person now. Person I was always supposed to be before jealousy and competition and mental illness twisted me into something else. And you think I should just trust that? After everything you did, I think you should test it the same way you tested everything else. What do you mean? She reached into her purse and pulled out a small digital recorder. I recorded this entire conversation. Every word I've said, every admission I've made, every request I've made. She set the recorder on my desk. If you think I'm still dangerous, if you think I'm still the person who tried to eliminate you, then you can turn this over to the police. I violated the terms of my psychiatric release by coming here. I could go to prison for years. She met my gaze with an expression of profound sincerity. And if you don't think I'm dangerous, then maybe we can try to be family again. Slowly, carefully, with all the boundaries you need to feel safe. I stared at the recorder, then at the woman who had been my sister and was now someone else, but wanted to be both. The audacity was still there, but so was something else, a genuine, heartbreaking vulnerability. She had laid everything on the table, offering me the power to destroy her or to save her. I picked up the recorder, feeling its weight in my hand. It represented not just a choice, but a future one of permanent separation and retribution. Or one of tentative, fragile hope. I need time to think about this, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I need to talk to my therapist. Maybe arrange for you to be evaluated by a professional. I understand. I'll be at the Marriott downtown, room 412. I'll wait to hear from you. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. For what it's worth, Naomi, ... I really am sorry. I forgive Lorraine, I said, the words surprising even me. The question is whether I can trust Claire. She nodded, a small, genuine smile on her lips. That's all I can ask for. And with that, she was gone. I sat there for a long time, the recorder still in my hand. The quiet hum of my office was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I was faced with a choice no one should ever have to make. But for the first time, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't felt since Lorraine tried to take my life. Hope.